The soft clinking of cutlery filled the dimly lit restaurant, where candles flickered against glass walls overlooking the city skyline. Emma shifted nervously in her seat, the hem of her navy dress twisting between her fingers. It had been 6 years since she'd gone on a real date. 6 years of working double shifts, of bedtime stories and school lunches, of being both mother and father. Tonight was supposed to be a small step towards something new. Her best friend, Lila, had insisted. "He's different," she'd said. "Ethan Cole, smart, kind, yes, he's a CEO, but he's not the arrogant kind." Emma had laughed then, unable to picture herself sitting across from a man who probably negotiated billion-dollar deals before breakfast. And yet here she was, heart-thudding, glancing at the entrance every few seconds. Beside her, little Noah swung his legs beneath the chair, humming a tune only he knew. He was supposed to stay with Lila tonight, but her babysitter had called in sick last minute. Emma had debated canceling, but something inside her whispered, "Go anyway. Be honest. If he walks away, he walks away." Her breath caught when she saw him walk in. Ethan Cole looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. Tall, crisp gray suit, confidence in every stride. The hostess pointed him toward her table. He smiled politely, and the air around her seemed to shift. Emma rose halfway, clutching her purse. "Mr. Cole, Ethan, please," he said warmly, shaking her hand. "You must be Emma." For a fleeting second, she considered pretending Noah was just her nephew, but she couldn't start something new with a lie. Her voice came out softer than she intended. "I brought my son," she said, glancing down at Noah, who now peeked shyly from behind her chair, clutching his tiny dinosaur. "Is that okay?" There was a pause, long enough for her stomach to twist. She'd seen this before. The flicker of discomfort, the polite smile, the excuse that followed. But Ethan didn't look away. Instead, his gaze softened, and he crouched down to Noah's level. "Well," he said with an easy grin, "only if your son lets me sit next to him." Emma froze. The tension she'd carried all evening melted into something warmer, unfamiliar. Hope. Ethan didn't hesitate. He pulled out the chair beside Noah instead of the one across from Emma and sat down like this was the most natural thing in the world. The waiter blinked in mild confusion, but Ethan only smiled and leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "So, young man," he said, lowering his voice conspiratorially, "I heard you're an expert in dinosaurs. Is that true?" Noah's eyes widened. "Yeah, I know all their names. Even the hard ones." Emma watched, stunned, as her son, who usually hid behind her leg when meeting strangers, began rattling off dinosaur names with uncontainable excitement. "There's Triceratops, Spinosaurus, and Therizinosaurus. He's got claws like this." Noah spread his fingers dramatically. Ethan gasped with mock fear. "Whoa, you might have to protect me if one shows up." Noah giggled, and Emma found herself smiling too, the tension draining from her shoulders. She'd been braced for awkward silences, for the kind of polite, careful small talk that usually filled her rare adult conversations. Instead, the table buzzed with laughter and warmth she hadn't felt in years. As the waiter returned to take their order, Ethan asked Noah, "So, what's the coolest thing you've ever built?" "I made a volcano once. But it exploded too much and Mama had to clean the kitchen," Noah admitted sheepishly. Ethan laughed. "Sounds like a scientist in training. Maybe next time, we'll build one that doesn't destroy the house." Emma blinked at the word "we." He said it like he already belonged in their tiny world, and for a moment she almost let herself believe it. Their food arrived: pancakes for Noah, salmon for Emma, and steak for Ethan. Noah immediately demanded that Ethan cut his pancakes, the cool way. Without hesitation, Ethan picked up the knife like a sword. "Okay, we're going to use ninja precision," he whispered. He made exaggerated cutting motions that had Noah laughing so hard he nearly spilled his juice. Emma's heart ached with something she hadn't expected: gratitude. No pity, no judgment, just kindness. The kind that made her forget for a moment how hard it had been to get here. She caught Ethan's eye across the table. He wasn't looking at his phone, or checking the time. He was looking at her. And smiling. For the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. By the time Noah's laughter faded into soft yawns, the restaurant had grown quieter. The background chatter turned to a distant hum, replaced by the comforting rhythm of clinking glasses and low jazz from the speakers above. Noah's head rested against the booth cushion, his toy dinosaur still clutched in one small hand. Emma watched him with tenderness and guilt. She hadn't planned to bring him, hadn't wanted to seem unprepared. But now, looking at Ethan across the table, she realized she didn't regret it at all. Ethan set down his drink, his gaze gentle. "He's a great kid," he said softly. "Smart, curious, and very confident." Emma smiled faintly. "That's one word for it." She hesitated. "I'm sorry if this wasn't what you expected. I know most people don't bring third wheels on first dates." He shook his head. "Don't apologize. You showed up honestly. That's more than most people do." His words landed deeper than she wanted to admit. Emma had spent years guarding her heart, deflecting pity or polite disinterest. Every date that came before had ended the same way, an awkward goodbye followed by silence. Men admired her strength in theory, but not the reality of it. They saw her as a story of endurance, not as a woman who still wanted to be seen, touched, and chosen. She looked up, meeting Ethan's eyes. They weren't the cold, calculating kind she'd imagined from a man in his position. There was warmth there, steady, unhurried, sincere. "You don't have to pretend," she said quietly. "Most people say they're fine with single moms until it gets real. The missed plans, the school runs, the endless noise." Ethan leaned forward slightly. "Emma," he said, voice calm but firm, "you're doing something extraordinary. Raising him, showing up, smiling through it all, it's not noise. It's life." For a moment, her breath caught. The sincerity in his tone wrapped around her like a soft blanket. "I don't want to know you without knowing all of this," he added. Without knowing him. Emma blinked hard, feeling the sting of unexpected tears. No one had ever said that to her before. No rehearsed lines, no pity, just truth. And in that quiet corner of a half-empty restaurant, something inside her began to thaw. The night air greeted them with a cool whisper as they stepped out of the restaurant. The city lights shimmered across the wet pavement, turning puddles into tiny mirrors of gold and silver. Emma pulled Noah's jacket tighter around him, the little boy now asleep in her arms. His head rested against her shoulder, soft breaths rising and falling. Ethan held the door open for her, his jacket draped over one arm. "Let me," he said quietly, reaching out. Before she could protest, he scooped Noah up with surprising gentleness. The boy stirred but didn't wake. Ethan adjusted his hold effortlessly, as though he'd done this 100 times before. Emma's throat tightened. There was something deeply disarming about the sight. This man in a pressed suit, worth more than she could imagine, carrying her son like he was the most precious thing in the world. They walked together toward the parking lot, their footsteps echoing softly. For a while, neither spoke. The city buzzed around them, cars passing, laughter spilling from a nearby cafe, but their silence felt easy, like a secret they shared. When they reached her car, Emma unlocked it and opened the back door. Ethan gently placed Noah inside, tucking the seatbelt over him with the care of someone who knew exactly how fragile childhood could be. "Thank you," Emma murmured, brushing a strand of hair from her face. He turned to her, smiling faintly. "For what? For tonight? For not running when you could've?" He chuckled softly. "You think I scare that easily?" She laughed quietly, her voice trembling just enough to betray her emotion. "Most people do." "Well," he said, stepping a little closer, "I'm not most people." The words hung between them, carried by the hum of the city. His eyes found hers, not demanding, not searching, just steady. The kind of gaze that made her feel seen without having to explain a single thing. He gestured toward Noah, now sleeping peacefully in the backseat. "Next time," he said, "how about we make it 3 seats from the start?" Emma's heart stilled. She wanted to play it cool, to say something witty, but all she could do was smile. A real, unguarded smile. As Ethan walked away into the blur of streetlights, she stood by the car, hand on the door, heart lighter than it had been in years. For the first time since she could remember, the future didn't look lonely. It looked like a beginning.